16 countries through work, study, and visits. He is having 5,000 plus social work and Melvin Jones Fellowship. He touched and inspired 10,000 plus people, aiming to touch 1 lakh lives. And he is having certificates in SAP, Six Sigma, Black Belt, Design Thinking, Business Analytics, EFQM Business Assessor, NLP, ICF Coach, Digital Marketing. So with this small introduction, I welcome you to, sir, this session. The topic of today's session, sir is going to speak is on organization behavior across cultures. Thank you so much, sir. And it is over to Dr. Vishwanath.
Sir, please unmute, sir.
Yeah, good morning, Madam Lakshmi Prabha. Thank you very much for
Good morning,
the invite into this meeting and all the MGU stakeholders and Department of Commerce and Business Management professors, and personally, and I know Dr. Ravi and Dr. also Ravi Kumar Miryala. Thank you very much for this invite, and also hello, all the participants of this, who are in this particular meeting now. So, yeah, just to tread into this topic, I wanted to just start with checking a few things, such as, there are 50 odd people now, yes, and more people are joining. I am curious how many people have actually worked in, international environments or international engagements till now. That would help me understand. Okay, because I have, there is a lot of, we can produce a lot of content, but it should really make sense, from the purpose of meeting the objective of this particular FDP. Okay, so yeah, you could, type in the chat box stating, yes, I had in the form of academic experience or professional experience, corporate experience, whatever, that experience, how many of you, are having, you could just type yes. If you're having yes, I would count and I would understand what percentage of these 50 people in this particular session have some kind of exposure. Because, when you have exposure, you would be able to relate well, you will be able to connect well. Than, any kind of explanation and imagination, yes, they help, but, I'm curious about to know that. Responses, please, right? If you have exposure of working in international environments as a teacher, as a professor, as an employee, as a consultant. So based on responses, I understand that, incidentally, none of you had that particular, experience or stints of international work. Okay, that's fine. And probably,
Sir, kindly unmute.
when did it went off actually? I'm sorry.
Just us.
Okay. Okay. So, if you have not had, such experience, at least you might have had experience of being, a resource person, or, being a participant, and then you might have had some interaction with people who don't belong to our particular country or our particular ecosystem, right? So I'll tell you an incident, which happened to me. You know that I'm in UK now. So when I first came to this country in 2002, and then I went back to India. I stayed back for long, and then I came back to this country. I'll tell you two instances, right? Now, yes, there is a lot of content to be, shared. Now I have 60 slides, but I thought something which is relevant, something which I lived, if I pass on, that would really help, and it would, add to wisdom, and it would help you, teach in your classroom. So I joined, as a business development guy in a company, and it was the first day in UK. I was given a phone number to call, right? His name was, Stuart. and I was told to call Stuart and tell something. Okay, so in a normal usual fashion, I picked my phone. Okay, I called Stuart, stating, "Good morning, Stuart. This is Vish. Vishwanath is long. Okay, long name. So I said, this is Vish, and I'm calling from so and so company, and I want to talk to you regarding something." He said, "I'm busy. Don't ever call me again," and disconnected. And I had to update this to my manager, and that manager got annoyed actually with what I've told. How come Stuart would say, "Don't ever call me," if the call is from our company? He knows me personally. He is working with us. We have a very good rapport. What actually went wrong? Then uh, I I got into thought, thinking probably my English was not understandable to that person, and probably that might have made him say, I mean, I might have sounded like a salesman trying to sell something, and probably he said respectfully, "Never call me again." Now, if that's the fact, it means I have spoiled a relationship between this company and that guy as Vishwanath, isn't it? And I was very uncomfortable. Then, uh, while my manager got annoyed, I was thinking what to do. Then, by in the evening, I have drafted an email because I had that guy's email ID stating, "Look, Stuart, this is Vish. I called you this morning to kind of propose this to you. Probably you're busy, uh, and also I've written, probably I was not understandable." Then he replied back stating, "Oh, Vish, I'm sorry. You're from so and so company." And then, "Yeah, you are not understandable." Probably he was respectful to me as well, stating, "Look, probably there was noise behind, and probably you're rushing somewhere. That's why I could not understand you. Let's get into the call tomorrow." Okay, the ice broke. I relaxed, and then uh, I had to update my boss stating that this has happened, right? And I have forwarded that email stating this is the outcome. So two things came out of it. Two things. One thing is, my boss called me and said, "I appreciate you for your ability to think and understand and exercise the will to email to that person, though I perceived that he kicked me out of the call." Okay. Now, it there I could earn a goodwill from Stuart, and also I could also help my company earn a goodwill. Okay, so here what I'm trying to say, see, organization in cross-cultural ecosystem is all common sense. It's all common sense, right? No book might have picked this scenario and given step-by-step guide, right? That you should do these things in the situation. Am I making sense? I want you know, some activity in the chat box. Am I making sense, people? Okay, I'm still waiting for responses. So, that's what is the essence of this session today. Okay, so what is that? Yes, there are principles, right? And there is a structure, and there are guidelines. But at the end of the day, it's you as a person who should be able to exercise and then take right actions. Had uh, I had not emailed that person very properly, okay, the relationship between this company and that person would have gone bonkers. Okay, and then at a later stage, they might have you know met somewhere, and then they might have not spoken with one another. So one call, because I could not talk well when I moved to this country, I was not understandable because of heavy accent. I mean, we come from India, right? So we have heavy accent, and not everybody understands unless we slow down, yes, we cannot speak in their accent, but unless we slow down, like, unless we slow down, people here won't be able to understand the language or the intent or the communication which I want them to understand. You understand? This difference would actually make them understand. So the thing is, like, yes, we speak English, and then we speak proper English, hopefully. But the problem is, it's a foreign language to us, right? We have our own mother tongue. So, like, if a Tamil guy speaks Telugu, or a Malayalam guy speaks Telugu, though they speak grammatically correct Telugu, or you how you feel, that is the feel they get when we speak English. You understand? I'll also tell you another scenario. It's also very interesting. I was working in one of the global firms, and then in India, I was in India then, and a global leader came to India. Okay, and then we had interaction with him, and we were on a round table, and he was having heavy Canadian accent, right? American speaks differently, and Canadians speak differently. So he had heavy Canadian accent. It was not understandable at all. I had no opportunity to actually increase the size of my ears so that I'll be able to understand. But still, I was very keen to not to miss anything. My turn came. He asked me something I didn't understand, and there were around 20 people in the call. So I said yes. I don't know. I said yes for what? Then he asked something. I said, yeah, that's it. Yeah. I said the same thing again. He said, very good, Vish. That's all. Then I don't know what I committed. I said yes. And there were my managers around me, and there were my colleagues around me. What I've committed, I didn't know. Uh, I was also embarrassed to ask my colleagues. I mean, I was embarrassed to discuss about the situation with my colleagues as well, as to know what he asked and what I said. Should I go and immediately contact him and tell I didn't mean, and I might have promised something from the company. So afternoon, while I was thinking, after the meeting, immediately my you know practice lead uh, you know messaged me to come to the room. Then I thought, I'm fired today. I'm fired. Okay. Thank you very much, God. I told, I walked to the room, and my vice president was very appreciative. Right. The thing, what happened was, he asked me about a new uh, module which they want to implement in SAP, right, for a client. And he asked me whether we had that capability to take up the responsibility. I said yes. You understand? I said yes. And then he said, we could, hopefully we could start this in next couple of weeks. I said, that's it, yes. So incidentally, both of my answers actually went well. And then that guy has informed my vice president about what I communicated. And that's more billing for the company, and that's more resources for the company, and more profit for the company. And my vice president was happy. And then, for that project, I was a lead. You understand? So we never know how things go. In the previous example, it was, you know, a silly situation. I could turn around, and in the present example, I spoke something randomly. It worked for the company. You understand? On the same way, there are several examples where things didn't go well. Okay. So having said this, uh, what I would like to say is, there is a lot of content, right? And there is a lot which we could speak, which we could share, we could discuss. But unless you are in that scenario, actual scenario, you won't be able to comprehend. And that's why I asked a question when I was starting. Look, guys, how many of you have had any international experiences? Right? That's the question with which I started. I'm sharing my screen now. Hope you're able to see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, professors, this is the thing which I started with, and then yeah, we have a lot of slides here, but wherever necessary, we'll get into the relevant examples and relevant scenarios, maybe from your context as well. And also, I see this is a big challenge for what do you call especially teachers. Okay, I'm just stopping the screen share again now. So, I see, uh, you know, people from Asia like India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, Burma, Iran, Africa coming to UK, and they are very knowledgeable people. They have PhD, they have publications, and they have some people have postdoctoral fellowships. And you know, I understood and perceived that uh, not every of them, not many of them land up, in teaching in these universities, right? The reason is only one thing: because of the ability to communicate to local people in this part of this world. Okay, and you know, for a corporate guy, right? I mean, I started my career as a teacher long back. Now I'm a freelancer, right? Visiting faculty. I do all that on and off. Okay, and but 80% of my work is corporate work, right? I work in agile. I work in digital transformation. So there is not much interaction, especially after a few meetings, right? It's all communication through the emails, and it's all filling the dashboards and seeing the reports. That's it, pretty much. Okay, but for a teacher, right, for a professor, right, communication is the key, right? If you're teaching to people in this part of the world, right? So they come from different ecosystem, we come from different ecosystem, and they relate to local examples and local scenarios. We won't be having all those local things handy, local dialects, local sayings and all. And then the struggle. Okay, so yeah. So, what are those conditions which affect multinational operations? Okay, here this is a vast subject, right? And in this, whatever 60, 70 minutes, we'll be touching on few things, you know, and we will kind of dissect them, and we'll try to kind of pick some things from them and digest, and then, add to our wisdom. So, some nations are economically developed, other are just developing such their natural and human resources. Some are educationally and educational, social advanced, others have minimal literacy and social development. Okay, now from this context, uh, uh, we could pick some things. Okay, now there was recent scenario in my office where I'm working as a consultant now. So there were some Indians, okay, and there were some neighboring country people from Bangladesh and Pakistanis, okay, and then somebody uh, we all have different practices locally, and then in the break time there was a discussion, and the discussion went a bit nasty, okay, and then when it went nasty, somebody got insulted, and they had to actually complain to the safeguarding team. And here safeguarding issues are taken very, very seriously, right? And it could uh, it could result in kind of arrest, and also sometimes for immigrants it could result in deporting. I mean, that serious. I mean, the system is. So yeah, and the risk was mitigated. This the scenario is, uh, the person who judged these people was, a local man, a local European man, and then we see people from this Asian part of the world fighting. So I mean, after this meeting, there was a discussion. There was a meeting in the office, and if we had seen the reports, it always happened that people from the subcontinent had been involved in some kinds of discussions, some kinds of, you know, issues, right, and insulting one another, which is not the case incidentally with people in this part of the world. So, I mean, now referring to that slide, which I was trying to show recently, just few minutes back, I'm bringing it up again. Some nations are economically developed, others are just developing, and they're natural and human resources. Some are educationally, socially advanced. So, you know, in the previous examples, the social aspect, the social index is very high, you know, in Asian nations, and then they have very strong beliefs and very strong attachments, and they're not comfortable adjusting and tuning to other systems or accepting or embracing others things, and that's why they often engage in interaction, I mean, in kinds of tussles, and that is actually disturbing the office, right? An office environment, office system gets disturbed, and operations will get affected, isn't it? In the same way, if you see conditions affecting multinational operations, if you can put them, or attitudes, values, expectations, and participants. Okay, understanding these differences and how they influence international behavior is aided by examination of the following things. When you say attitudes, values, and expectations, these are quite big terms, right? You know, what is attitude? Attitude is nothing but a bent of mind. Okay, and values is what are values? Values are those things which drive our, you know, beliefs and our actions. And what are the expectations? You know, as human beings, you know, we are all positive beings. You know, we work with hope that, you know, that you will be better tomorrow than today. Your family will be better tomorrow than today. Your company will be better tomorrow than today. Your country will be better. We live with that hope, isn't it? So we are a bundle of attitudes and values and expectations, right? And they are the outcome of the ecosystem in which people are living in different nations, right? Which are bound by different laws and different regulations, different cultures. Now, when you look at that, you know, the outcome of the people behavior is is what is perceived, and the outcome of their behaviors will actually often conflict with, you know, with people who belong to other geographical location, who have different, you know, kind of building blocks and things. Here the example which I want to take and tell you is, uh, I'm stopping again. So there was an incident where we had to go to Japan, and it was for a client called Nissan. You know Nissan? So before we went, we were trained actually with Japanese culture, Japanese mannerisms, Japanese etiquettes, how we should eat before them, all that we were groomed. And yes, we felt we got training and we went to Japan. And we had to go to office at 9 o'clock. We already told, see, they're very timely people, be on time. So 9 o'clock office, we very plannedly, very properly reached at 8:45 in the day one. And we went into the office, and we have seen office was full, right? It was full, bustling with activity. I mean, normally we see, if the office is at 9, we see people coming in at 8:45, 8:50, 9:05 and settling, right? Today also we have seen, when session was starting at 10:30, we started seeing people coming at 10:30, 10:35, and we had to wait for 5 to 7 minutes, right? So this is typically what we have seen and what we got tuned to. And when I've seen that at 8:45, I have seen that a lot of people actually working. They're not coming and settling. Then we have looked at the watches to check whether we were on time, we were late, but we were on time. And next day, with that embarrassment, we went at 8:15, and we have seen that around 8:15 people are coming and settling. When the office is at 9, people are coming, you know, at least 30 to 40 minutes in advance. And evening also, we have seen that usually we have to leave office at 5 o'clock. Now, if it's 4:30, we start thinking, right? Packing, closing, right? Just, you know, whiling away half an hour, and then 5 o'clock timely we'll push out usually. And we have seen there is no sense of people closing their work. We are seeing at 5, and around 5:45, 6 we started some activities and people started going. So the input was they're spending at least 45 minutes to 1 hour more than the agreed contract time with the company. Okay. So if 1,000 people are working 1 hour more, it means they're giving 1,000 hours of work every day. It means 5,000 hours of work every week. It's 20,000 hours of work every month. And you can, extrapolate into a year's time. On the contrary, then, we discussed, amongst ourselves what happens where I work, right? If the punching time is at 9 o'clock, everybody will be running towards that punching time, right? As if, there is tsunami or there is some policemen behind, and they punch in, and then after that they relax, right? I have punched, that's all, I've come on time. Then they will go to their desk after 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and 30 minutes as well, have tea, coffee, discussion about country, world, globe, COVID, and then they start. So when it means you have to work between 9 and 5, at 9 o'clock you have to start your work. It means your laptop should be on and your transactions should start. It's not that you have to punch the office, go to 50th floor, go all around, have all the global discussions and start your work at 9:45. It doesn't work like that, isn't it? So now, where is this behavior difference coming? Is our MBA, school teaching that you have to reach on time, you have to, clock your card at 8:45? No, we don't teach that. We don't talk about them, right? So that behavior is the outcome of the culture in which people are living. You understand? So pulling up that PPT again. Yeah. So, I was talking to attitudes, values, expectations from participants, and their outcome of the social, legal, ethical, political, and economic frameworks we come from. Okay. So, if you see, many countries have poorly developed human resources, shortage of managerial personnel, scientists, and technicians limit the ability to employ local labor productively, and needed skills must be imported temporarily from other countries, while vast training programs begin to prepare local workers. Okay. Now, if you see, this is a fact, right? In this part of the world, we see all the IT guys flying out from India, right? We see BTechs, computer science, and BTech ITs, doing some course in Java, and then some, Salesforce, and then we see them. I'm going on site. I'm going to UK. I'm going to America, Australia, whatever. We see them, and the thing is, the kind of IT savvy we have, the kind of inclination we have towards IT is one thing versus the kind of population we have. Okay. And here the population is relatively less. Also, their inclination towards being IT professionals is not as much as in India. They take it easy, right? They don't care, right? Here, typically, in Indian ecosystem, IT has some specific, kind of fanciness. Here, it's not that. That's why you see, any IT guy is, in this part of the world as well. IT guy is Indian guy. That's all. And then after Indians, you see Chinese people doing very well in IT, right? And you don't see Americans coming to UK or American coming to Europe to on site. They're in leadership positions. They thrive. They work in a different way and they look at different things. Okay. Now, as the example shows, the lending of skills people to nation for training their local workforce may provide more lasting benefit to its development rather than lending of capital. So, okay, this is probably an incorrect slide which I have put. I'm sorry. So, and also these political conditions also actually, drive. We see, especially in Middle East, lot of labor coming from Philippines, even from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh to work in the Middle East. Okay. Now, they make little money in their countries and they make probably little more, and that's why they go. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say, technical people going from one location to other location, and non-technical people, odd job people going from one location to location, is also driven by the political conditions in that respective world. Recently, with what happened in Afghanistan, right? UK has brought in 20,000 you know Afghanistan people who are in trouble, right? They were brought to UK, and they have been given some shelter, and uh, we see a lot of activity about what these people are doing, right? And there are, because they come from different ecosystem, right? And this ecosystem is different, there is trouble around with them, right? And they are not causing trouble intentionally, right? And see, now people actually have they pick something in India so easily, right? Mugging is very easy in India because we don't have CCTV cameras and all. Here it's very difficult. If you do mugging, you'll be 100% caught, okay, because of the CCTV system. So Afghanistan is, because of they're giving home and food, but no cash. They're not given cash. So some people, incidentally, unfortunately, unknowingly involved in some kind of these things, and then they also had some physical fight with local people, right? When these people were going in groups, and mocks here you don't see groups. So I mean, these things also are there. And economic conditions, per capita income, rapid inflation, and unequal distribution of wealth, how, I mean, they all contribute to our persona, which I was referring to as values, and attitudes and expectations, which kind of manifest in the form of behavior. So this guy has done a research on in 40 countries for his 1,16,000 IBM employees, okay, who are spread across the world, and he understood that these are the five dimensions that accounted for sharpest differences among employees, which include individualism, power distance, uncertainty, avoidance, masculinity, and time orientation. Okay, so this is the crux which I was referring to. Common sense, yes, we should have common sense, right? In anything we do, in anything we exercise. Yes, we know all these silly petty things, that you should be observant, you should be thoughtful, you should have understanding, you should be able to take time, you should be able to comprehend, you should be able to have a strategic. We know all that, right? But those things need to have some guiding principles, right? So that we will be able to exercise our common sense in appropriate way. So these are the five parameters which have come up, which if you understand, and if you exercise, we could actually kind of tame those spikes which are caused in organizations, which might impact the organization's smoothness and effectiveness and flow. Okay, so what is individualism, collectivism? The degree to which people prefer to act as individuals rather than as members of groups, and believe individual rights above all else. Okay, this is an example which I would take. I would like to tell with what happened. In a group of 20 people, we went to China long back, and we went on a project actually. So on Friday and Saturdays, we were given, you know, the company provided a facility where we could go around China, Beijing. Okay, and then there were managers, and there were team members and team leaders. So now, typically, manager thinks he's the manager, people should listen, right? And team leader should think, yes, I have a boss and I have subordinates. Okay, but these people who are technical people, like they who are under these team leaders and managers, they know what's the big deal. It's only few years because of which somebody is the team leader. It's only because of few years more than somebody is manager. Anyway, I'm going to become like them very soon. So it's all equality is expected, because there is no sir mechanism in corporates. It's all names: Vish, John, Ram, Ramesh, whatever. Okay, there is nothing specific about names. And the situation was, when we all were going, the bosses were deciding where to go, when to go. Okay, let's go to that place, let's go to zoo, let's go to this park. And there was some friction in those team members who are young. Okay, team members were younger, so they were not liking these idiots, the old idiots. they're taking us to places where they want, and they're not letting us go to where we want. We want to go to some hangout places to have fun. Okay. And next weekend it blasted off, telling there was a fight in the bus. And manager said, "I'm manager, you should listen to me." He said, "Go to hell, you're a manager in the office, not in the bus, not on a weekend." You understand how things. Now, this is individualism which I'm referring to. So all this was observed by the Chinese bus driver, right? He observed the fight which was going on heavily, and then he stopped. He asked, I mean, okay, don't you have a system to follow a leader? Why don't you follow a leader and resolve this? Now, amongst you, come on, pick somebody as a leader, let the leader follow. That is what is the system which you're seeing in China, right? They have a communist party and they have a leader, and that leader decides and country follows. Unlike what we see in democracy in India, right, where our multi-party system, and all the discussions which happen in parliament and assemblies, and what all happens, you are seeing, right? So their system is, you have one leader, just follow him. But we have high individualism. That is because of other factors of such as education, and then culture, and then demand for respect and all. Okay. And the collectivism emphasizes a tight social framework in which people expect others in groups of which they are part to look after them and protect them. That's what is collectivism, is Chinese system, Chinese methodology. Okay. And they all work in those group lots. That's it. There is no individual attention seeking, nor preferences for individualism. So if you see in this part of the world, right, you see something in between India and something in between China. Yes, there is groupism. Yes, there is collectivism. Yes, there is individualism. But if you further move to US, it's very high. You cannot imagine the cultural difference between UK and US. It's in US people are more shrewd, right? More what do you call aggressive, right? And more specific, more pointed. They don't have any what do you call, they don't give any space for empathy, right? If you're not good at work, okay, here in India we invent ways to tell that he's not good at work. Look, actually you're good, you're doing good work, you're doing great work, but maybe in the last semester you did not do well. We come out with all these ways to tell people. And in US, if you work with US client, they'll say point blank, you did bullshit. Okay, your last day is today, thank you very much, that's all. Then there is no hanky panky, there is no buttering, there is no filling up. So I mean, that's what happens, and that annoys, right? When people come from India to work, and if somebody is telling you are a bullshit, when they say your work is bullshit, it's not actually, they're not insulting you as a person. They're actually pointing the work which you have done, right? You might have not done coding properly, you might have not done your reporting properly, you have not done your text properly, right? And when they have to say bad work, and if it is more bad, right, they say bullshit, and we take it personally. And if you tell the same thing to him, they won't mind. And when we tell them, we nag, we crib, we explain, we talk many things, and they don't understand. They say, why are you wasting my time? Can't you tell me precisely? Can't you be point blank in communicating to me? Okay. So all this comes from this individualism and collectivism kind of ecosystems they come from. And power distance describes the degree to which people in a country accept that power in institutions and organizations is distributed unequally. Okay. Now you're seeing public enterprise and private enterprise in India. Okay. Now, and the the power centric enterprises, okay, they work differently. And also the prevalence of power, the spread of the power across the organization with modern management concepts which we are all familiar with, right? They facilitate in a different way. Not to take specific examples, but if you see firms like Infosys, right, Indian company which has become global and which is doing very, very well, right? Yes, there are a few other firms also. It's because of the power centricity has been compromised, and that's why they have grown enormously. For example, there is a policy right now stating the invoice should be paid within 14 days. It is a government rule, for example. Now, government to amend it, it's a very big process which is involved. But in firms, for example, like Infosys and Wipros and all, now it will be compromised immediately, telling yes, somebody says I need my invoice payment within 3 days. It will be amended and it will be executed and the work will be done. So there is no blockage of the work, and that's why when a lot of foreign investment is expected in India, right? And especially expats, I mean, who are Indians or living overseas, when they come to India to kind of set up something, this, this hierarchy, puts them off, and their investments are going into investment friendly places such as UK, Singapore, where there are no hazels, there is proper accountability, and you know in Switzerland and Poland, right? Things are better, right? Now, even me, right? I love India. I'm from India. I'm a Telugu guy. But when I think, if I have to go, there are a lot of hanky-panky things, unfortunately, which are prevalent, right? In addition to the hanky-panky things which are prevalent, we need to kind of go and stand before those people who are in power, right? That obviously puts me off when it's not necessary. So, you understand? So, let's move on to the next one. Uncertainty avoidance. The degree to which people in a country prefer structured over unstructured situations defines the uncertainty avoidance. In cultures that score high on uncertainty avoidance, people have increased level of anxiety but about uncertainty and ambiguity and use laws and controls to reduce uncertainty. Now, yes, while we are all hopeful about the future, we are also uncertain. Okay, COVID uncertainty, what will happen? New variant has come. I've taken 2 doses, booster, AstraZeneca, Pfizer. Will I die? Will I survive? What will happen? Right. So uncertainty, right? You cannot do anything with an uncertainty, but you have to live with it. But things that are certain. For example, when you are studying, we all are unsure about whether we'll get government job or private job. There is a lot of anxiety, but in this part of the world, right, unemployment is still there, but it's lowest. The reason is, the structure in this country has been built in such a way that everybody would land up in something. And if somebody is not working, the ecosystem actually supports them to get back to work, right? Small population, and there are local bodies. They know that in this house there is an unemployed guy. They'll have access to my email ID, phone number, my school, everything. They will run around me, they'll catch me, they will push me, encourage me, motivate me to do everything needed to get into employment. Ultimately, I land up in employment if I'm unemployed. Okay, so that's why this reduces the uncertainty avoidance index. On the contrary, in developing nations, right, there is no such situation, unfortunately, right? While the governments are trying their best to minimize. So there the situation comes, yes, we need to address. Now, when you're dealing with people who are uncertain, right, they behave differently. That's why when people come on site, they get little more money than salary, so they're happy. So that fellow will be always thinking, if I don't do well, I'll be sent back to India. Oh my God, I should be here only. So okay, the project is coming to an end, you'll see anxious faces. It means I'll be sent back. So that guy will ask, sir, I want to be here, can I get extension? You understand? On the contrary, people in this part of the world, there is unemployment benefit. If you're unemployed for some reason, government pays them money. And there is mortgage insurance. If you can't pay mortgage, there is mortgage insurance. So uncertainty index is not there. That's why their temperament, their behaviors are different. We need to be aware of it. And when we see people here, when people come on site to this part of the world, when this is a thing, they expect Indians to be like that. It cannot happen. We should not expect. If you expect, we are wrong. Okay. We should understand, yes, our ecosystem is different. And here people are different. You cannot expect people to be there like people here. So masculinity versus femininity. High masculinity rating indicates that culture has separate roles for men and women, with men dominating the society. High femininity rating means culture sees little differentiation between male and female roles, and treats women as equals of men in all aspects. We all know this topic is very, done, beaten, blue and black. We all know, right? This and uh, this part I see, still I see little imbalance in this part of the world as well. Some roles are not given to women, right? Especially, for example, night patrolling, and Uber drivers. You don't see women drivers in this country as well, like in India. So yeah, and more the difference, and we need to kind of be aware about those differences and act accordingly. Okay, so time orientation. Some culture emphasizes values such as necessity of preparing for the future, the value of thrift and savings, and qualifications of persistence, which have long-term orientation. Other cultures have value the past and accent the present with the respect of tradition and need to fulfill historical social obligations, and thus are considered to have short-term orientation. So long-term orientation versus short-term orientation is the crux of this point. So now, you know, we have a tendency, right? When we have, when we go on holiday, we'll end up spending more, okay? Buying more things. So we are going on holiday, spending money, buy more dresses, more fancy things, have more food. Okay, holiday, or we have a function event at home. So that is short-term orientation. Your behavior will change immediately after you come from holiday or after event. After event, you will become very stringent. Okay, why we have spent 5 rupees more? Why we have to 10? All that comes into picture, isn't it? Now, having that, focus. I mean, organizations having that focus, comes from the system in which they are. If you see the culture in US now, especially organizations, startups and SMEs, they want to grow to a point and they want the bigger companies to take them over. You understand? They want to make money, they want to be happy. Okay, I made 1 million, right? I made a couple of millions, and let me relax for 1 year and then think about another model. You understand? So put up a good idea, okay, and then bring some co-founders where the risk is mitigated. I'll not be investing, but I'll be also getting 5 different brains, okay, to work on this project. And then we all will roll out something by spending some little money, and then this product will be up in next 6 months. Then we'll go to a venture capitalist firm and then get some funding. We'll do the market buzz, and then we'll increase the sales, and then we'll make the bigger company buy my company. That's it. That's the orientation which is there. And you see a lot of such things coming from Harvard, Stanford, Kellogg's, and all, right? On the contrary, what you don't see that in India. In India, it's no, my own company, my legacy. I want to build this company. I want to become a legacy CEO. I want generations to live. You understand? So hardly you see, partnerships, and then people. It is increasing now. It is compared to last 10 years back. It's a lot better now, but still, if I become partner, I'm not entrepreneur. I need to adjust to people. I need to compromise. I need to listen to them. They also will have check poverty. It's like another, entrepreneurship being a slave. I don't like that. I don't want partners. Right now, you have to pay to another brainy guy, and you have to pay 1 lakh or two. You don't want to pay. If you want to have 5 brainy people, if you have to pay 1 lakh per month, so it's 5 lakhs per month, and 6 months is 30 lakhs. So invest the model is these 30 lakhs I don't want to spend, right? I make them my partners with a good idea, and those people will put their brain because they're part of the company. That's how they grow. So this long-term and short-term vision also, plays. And even here, I got several opportunities as a co-founder, right? Can we be part of it? Can we be part of that? The reason is they see that I'm qualified, they see that I'm a speaker, they see that I'm a trainer, they see that I have a good, back home links, and they see Indian market. So because of these parameters, a lot of people approach me, come on guy, you be a partner, co-founder, and you will have 30% stake, 20% stake. I'm just telling, this is not prevalent, back home. So here you see an example, of various countries and their power distance indexes. If you see, Austria, the power distance index is 11, okay, and individualism is 55, and masculinity, versus femininity thing is around 79 index, okay, and uncertainty avoidance is 94. This is one of the best actually. Belgium is one of the best countries in Europe. In the same way, you see that you see that in Japan as well. I had been to Japan, I'm familiar. And if you see Great Britain, right, France, they're all in France. You see power distance is high. Okay, so these are all based on some studies to understand. So when we are interacting with them, when we are meeting them, when we are contacting them, when we have to work with them, all this would really kind of help us. It will complement us to some extent. Okay, so now what are the barriers to cultural adaptation? So we are almost 1 hour through. Okay, we are getting into the last part of it. Now what are the barriers and how to kind of address them? I would appreciate if we have any questions and we could kind of direct ourselves according to that questions which anybody has. We could have a couple of questions. It would really help. If somebody has any questions and we could drive it along. No questions?
Sir, good afternoon, sir. I am Sunarayana.
Hello, sir.
Sir, nice.
Yes, your voice went off, sir. Hello? I think internet issue at sir's place. Yeah, Snehal Bhav, sir, you can go ahead. You raise your hand, right? Yes, Snehal, go ahead. Go ahead. Suryan, sir, what happened?
Maybe he's having internet connectivity issues.
Okay, fine.
Sir, one
Okay, if
question
no
from my
questions-
side. One question from my
please.
side, sir. As you
Yes,
are
madam,
mentioning,
please.
yeah, as you are mentioning expatriate system. So in
Yeah.
connection with the international human resource management, how this expatriate and repatriate system will work, sir?
See, could you further elaborate a bit?
In connection with human resource management,
Hmm.
how the expatriate system will work out by using these 5 dimensions.
See, now this expatriate system which you're referring, actually, I am understanding, but I incidentally never thought, in that frame actually. Okay, but in the context of your question, what I would like to reiterate is, these guiding factors which we have picked up now should be, aligned with, in our exercise. I mean, and there is no specific, method to exercise, right? Because we work with different races and different cultures and different countries and which operate in different, legal systems with different rules and regulations, right? And each of them have a lot of, significant differences actually. And when it comes to addressing, it necessitates that, you exercise all these guidelines and then, kind of converge upon them and then act. I know, it was not a very specific answer to your question, but I tried to give a holistic answer. Yeah, sure.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. So should we move ahead, ma'am, to the?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We can go
Okay.
ahead.
Sir, there is a power disturbance. Sorry.
No problem. Go ahead.
This uncertainty you are saying in the organization, especially
Yeah.
like how to handle that and what will be the effect on the organization, especially in other countries. Not in India, we have a certain future. Jobs are stable, but in other countries, we don't have jobs like which are stable. How does that kind of nature have an effect on the organization? Or is there any specific something the organization has to do for that?
See, now, we know organizations are also, building blocks of a nation. Okay. they are part and parcel of the nation. They're complementing in the nation building and running the nation, right? So I specifically cannot say organization should take the responsibility. I cannot advocate, but I assume and I presume that they should take the responsibility as well, okay, to minimize uncertainty. Now, now, how the uncertainty is addressed here in this country, I already told you in when I was talking, right? The ecosystem in which the country is operating, the ecosystem in which country is operating, you have few firms, right? And now, if I'm laid off, if I'm being laid off from my company, government would know that I'm laid off because the tax is deducted even if even for a laborer, tax is deducted at the employer's end. So if I'm removed, the the body associated with that government would know that Vishwanath is laid off. Okay, and then it would fire a notification to my local body to contact me asking why I was removed, what happened. Okay, and then somebody would call me to check now what I want to do next. Would I want to upskill? Would I want to get into similar role? Would I want to what? And what help I need actually? And then they'll be assigning me to a specialist on this. You understand? These measures actually will make person hopeful, will actually reduce the uncertainty index. And this affordability is a luxury. It's not possible in developing nations because we have other important challenges which our countries are fighting, isn't it? So now, coming to your question, what organizations could specifically do, right? Now, when you say organizations, I also see private institutions, education institutions in India, right? There is a lot of uncertainty, right? There is, demand and supply gap got disturbed. Nobody knows how many students a college will join, right? And there is staff, and then staff are uncertain about whether they'll be retained, they will get their salary or not. In the same way, organizations, right? They employ people, and there is a lot of competition. Government says make in India. Government wants entrepreneurship. Everybody is starting companies. Everybody is doing digital marketing. So I start a company. You start a company. You pull my team, and then you understand. So, especially in developing nations, right? This uncertainty issue is a bit challenging, right? Yes, in a big firms, in government, your jobs are stable, but in all the startups, in SME sector, the life is very, very uncertain, right? But yet, with appropriate financial education, which is prevalent, right, and with appropriate skilling, track which people take, they can reduce that uncertainty to some extent. For example, in my case, okay, now I left my employment long back and I became entrepreneur. And when I become entrepreneur, I know I might have tough time, I might have challenging times. So to reduce uncertainty, I have made two tracks of income now, right? I am into two businesses, which are very contrast and very different. And also there is third aspect which I do, right? I do corporate coaching and corporate training. Okay, that's my third. I spend 20% on it. Now this 20% time, if I spend on my business, probably I'll make more money. But still I'm spending 20% of my time on corporate trainings, because if my main business goes wrong, still this will feed me and keep my family up and running. You understand? So yeah, and is it a wise decision? I don't know. I don't know. I can't say, right? But a billing, how it works in a corporate companies, a billing on one person could be £1,000 per day, is 1 lakh rupees per day, and which doesn't happen, in these corporate trainings, but it has its own track. Okay, so it's all personal calls based on many situations, Dr. Sir. That's what is my opinion. Do you have anything to say, comment?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. So you're able to see my PPT, I guess, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So barriers to cultural adaptation. So low context cultures tend to rely on written rules and legal documents, conduct business first and value expertise, performance. Germany, US, right? Here, there are low context cultures where things are based on rules, documents. Okay. On the contrary, if you see high context cultures, these cultures tend to emphasize personal relations, place high value on trust, focus on non-verbal cues, and accept the need to attend and to social needs and before social matters. China, Korea, and Japan. Right? India falls in between. Okay. So Western world is low context culture, right? It's all on law, rule, paper, document, contract. And then in eastern part of the world, you will see, personal relations, trust, non-verbal cues, and all that. So, we should be very, when we are trying to partner or trying to employ or trying to work, or you as a contractor or an employee, we should be very about this culture. For example, what I've seen in Japan, in India, almost in corporate, sir is gone. Sir is gone. It's all name, Vish, Rajat, whatever. So, and there is no standing up also, in an office. If a vice president walks, there is no necessity to stand up unless it is necessary. Okay. You can say hi and you can continue talking while you're working and he'll walk. But what I've seen in China and Japan is when the boss comes, everybody stands, right? And then greeting is not shake hand. So they bend their head and greet. They bend their head and hit. Now you see that in Japan, Tokyo, right? They bend, and not bending is disrespect. Disrespect. So when you go to Japan and when you want to sign up with a client, though you may be expert, if you don't connect with them in that way, right? They cannot, kind of, it's difficult for us to move ahead with them. Okay. So now, barriers to cultural adaptation: parochialism and ethnocentrism. Parochialism means people see the situation around them from their own perspective. They may fail to recognize key differences between their own cultures, their own and others' cultures. Ethnocentrism is occurs when people are predisposed to believe that their homeland conditions are the best. You understand? This happens, right? Everybody believes their country is the best and their religion is the best and their race is the best, right? And their little accommodation, they're not accommodated about other. So that place, that is the barrier, right? And parochialism means, people fail to recognize the difference between and appreciate the difference between cultures. Okay. Now, the present thing which is going on in UK is there are 1 million Indians living in London city. 1 million 10 lakhs Indians. Okay. Now there is a petition going around asking Diwali to be declared as a public holiday. Here, public holiday is Christmas, public holiday is New Year, public holiday is bank holiday, right? No religious festivals are not given holidays. So the law says if 1 lakh people sign a petition, that will be discussed in Parliament. So now 1 lakh Indian people are signing, saying Diwali should be holiday. Now there is hot discussion. Now Jews have a separate day, and Muslims have a separate day. Sikhs have a separate day. Now all are into this activity. Now everybody is signing petitions, sending to Parliament. You understand? So it means if people from 100 different countries are living in this country, if all the public holidays will come into picture, and the debate is when will the how it will run. So I'm telling, right? So as an example, and cultural empathy, another barrier is awareness of difference across the cultures and understanding the ways in which those differences can affect business relationships. When cultural empathy continues, it will result in geocentric organization which ignore person's nationality while emphasizing employees' ability in selection, assignment, and decisions. So here we see that that in India we have is there discriminations against caste is one thing which we see. Here is there discrimination against against your nation or your whatever your religion. That's very prevalent here. Things are taken very, very seriously. very, very seriously. So now, that awareness will actually help us. See, why we are talking all these things we are talking all these things in the organizational context for organizations to move ahead, right? Realizing their business outcomes, achieving their targets, and then grow and then diversify. You understand in that context. So now in the larger context of enterprise, what we're talking this is a minuscule, I know that, but when in international environment, right, this is very, very significant, very significant, right? In the last session also I told one example. Now uh, I told two examples in my previous session in the same MGU FDP. Now here, you know you're expected to be master in one thing, right? When you say a lot of things, you're gone, right? What are you, right? I'm a lead generation expert. I'm a digital marketing expert for small and minuscule enterprises. Is what they expect. Okay. Now, if you say, sir, I know marketing, I'm HR, I know operations, I can do training, I can do consulting. They say, thank you very much. Get lost. That's it, right? Here they don't believe that a person can be multi-skilled, right? They believe a normal man can be skilled in one thing, and a focused person will pick one thing and he will master, right? That's why you don't see so many degrees and so many titles under one person in this part of the world, right? In the same way, you are expected to tell in India, we are expected friends to tell, he's great, he's very he has mastery, blah blah and all that. And we are not accustomed to tell about our greatness, what we have achieved, that yeah, I'm a PhD from SK University, whatever. That's how about our greatness we speak with modest. Here you're expected to be very shrewd. Yes, I hold a PhD from India, and my topic is this. You're expected to be very, very assertive in what you're trying to say. If you're not assertive, you're gone. You won't be considered. You understand? So this is what is culture. And third thing also I told in my previous session that first thing is you need to have niche, right? Mastery in one thing. Second thing is you're expected to boldly tell, this is what am I, this is what I could do to you. And if you fail, you fail. If you succeed, you succeed. Last thing is what? Discipline, right? Here time is time. 9 is 9, that's all, right? And if you come at 9-1, it means you're gone. You're not respected. Whatever you may be, you're not respected for it, right? And I told in one of my meetings, right, one one client I had to meet. And also, guys, business meetings happen because of this culture in India. They happen in office, and here they happen in or breakfast meetings and lunches in pubs, and then in bars also, right? Business meetings and sign-offs happen from homes with e-sign and all. So I had to meet some person early in the morning, and I got late for some reason, and I messaged him stating, look, I'm delayed by 7 minutes because I know I'll be late by 5 minutes. I have put buffer 2 minutes, and I messaged him 7 minutes, and I said apologies. He said that's okay. I went there at 9:06 in the morning. So I said I'll reach by 9:07, but I reached at 9:06. And then I greeted him, and I was apologetic again with him. He said, he's a white man, gentlemen, sit down, let's have coffee, okay? And he says, our deal is done, right? I'm signing your contract. So I was surprised. I did not understand. I said, can you please tell what you told me just now? He said, gentlemen, your contract is signed, right? It was a 2-year deal. So I appreciate you telling me that you'll be coming 7 minutes late, and you were on time. And he asked, what is the reason for the delay? I said, I could not plan my day properly, right? Yes, I appreciate your frankness. Now we say traffic jam, power off, a lot of things we say, right? So That's all. Their culture respects truth. Their culture respects frankness, and that's all. I landed up in a deal. That work is still going on. The three resources working on the project, right? And we didn't meet. All that happened because I was frank. Had I had I been on time on that day, probably I wouldn't have got the deal. You understand? So that's what being empathetic about cultures. And then we have 20 12 minutes more. Okay, I wanted to put some cover what is global dexterity and what is globalization. I'll just quickly run through. You'll quickly get familiar. So you know we don't eat, people don't eat beef in India, right? And they eat chicken, and then McVeggies with beef, and then the chicken Maharaja is with chicken, right? So global plus local is globalization. So as an enterprise, right, we should have that intent and that orientation to actually globalize. KitKat, what you see, in India, you see that in various other flavors in West, strawberry flavor, soybean flavor, green tea flavor, fruit flavor, which we are not used to in India. Okay, neither I see them in UK. So these are specifically available in, eastern part of the world, Korea, Japan. Okay, donuts, right? Donuts is like very fancy item for children in US. Okay, and they have been customized for, you know pork floss donuts in China and kimchi crochets in Korea, right? The customized versions of donuts. Okay, so localization is responsive to local context with while maintaining the brand integrity. Okay, this Namaste symbol McDonald's has adopted for India. Okay, and then from companies to people, localization is maintaining branding integrity. Global dexterity is maintaining personal integrity. So we should understand what is you understood what is globalization is to maintain brand integrity, and dexterity is to maintain personal integrity, right? You're seeing, you know, uh, you're seeing this guy giving this card in this way. I experienced this in Japan, right? Here we give card with one hand by holding one tip of it, right? And then sometimes we'll be talking to other people while giving this card to them. That is nothing but an insult in Japan. So you're expected to bend your head, hold in two hands, and give it to the opposite person and look into their eyes, and then you have to, look back, stay back, and that guy has to read your card. It's not that he will take and put in your pocket or in your coat and then leave. No, he has to read, and he has to say whatever thank you in appropriate way. That is, that happens there. Okay, and then uh, the ability to adopt your behavior smoothly and successfully to the demands of foreign culture without losing yourself in the process, right? Yes, we'll oblige cultures, but without losing ourselves. Okay, and then you're seeing Nixon in US eating, US president eating with, these Chinese, what do you call, sticks. Okay, and then in US usually they hug, but in Europe they actually, kiss. Kissing is not actually kissing, but putting cheek to cheek is what is formally done. We find it very uncomfortable actually, but that's what is the practice. And you're seeing Bush and the Saudi king holding the hands and walking. So this holding the hands and walking is what, Middle Eastern people believe as somebody, kind of having trust within us. Okay, and here we are seeing, different attire. This guy having a different attire. I think it's South American version of dressing. So harder cases of cultural adaptation. So being assertive, delivering a presentation, promoting oneself, giving feedback. I was telling you recently, right? We'll quickly run through. We are running short of time. So it's expected to be assertive, right? In this part of the world, in Western world, in Eastern part of the world, we're expected to be humble, right? So you need to understand, you need to be wary, and also while delivering a presentation, right, you are expected to add, have value in a way that you will be able to be point blank and give all the relevant and right things for people to move on, but not leave anything for them to think and contemplate and exercise again. And then promoting oneself, right? You are expected to promote self. Nobody will promote in this part of the world, right? And last thing is giving feedback. Giving feedback here, it's point blank without any empathy in this part of the world. There, giving feedback is colored and then kind of pampered versions of feedback we are seeing. So now, if you're driving an organization, you should ensure that these things are covered. And if you're working as an employee or you're expected to bring somebody from some other culture, you should be wary about these patterns. Okay, so here is one example: Indian self-promoting at an event in US. Okay, I feel that his opinion. I feel that I'm performing a sin, trying to become something that I'm not, being artificial and fake. I try to sell myself, bragging about my abilities to a stranger, and that feels so weird and selfish to me. It makes me feel that I'm doing things to achieve my objectives at all cost. Understand? So Indian in US networking event, he had to speak, and after coming out, he expressed his opinion. Look, I feel so uncomfortable telling, yes, I am the best in the world. Believe me and come to me and get your work done. No. American giving direct feedback to Germany. In Germany, in US we do sandwich approach, but in Germany there is no preamble, no protecting anyone's ego. Just the blunt, direct message. I don't like that. That will not work, and it doesn't feel good to deliver that message. I feel like an holistic witness to a trial. From German perspective, it was being honest, but I didn't feel comfortable at all doing it. You understand? So 3 challenges: authenticity challenge, competency challenge, and resentment challenge, or typically, or experienced authenticity challenge when people are assertive, when people are shrewd, when people are direct, and then competency challenge, right? Am I not capable? I'm not competent. I'm being underlooked, and also resentment. No, I won't agree with him. Whatever may, I'll stick to what I'm thinking. I'll resign from this company. I'll cancel a deal. So these are the challenges which happen out of the friction. Okay. So paradox of global dexterity. To adapt your behavior, you need to be flexible. That's all. That's what is recommended. So first one is, four-step plan is given for each of us to, as guidelines, as guiding forces, as principles, as building blocks, as pillars, right? Diagnose the cultural code. What is the cultural code? Understand, pick from it. Okay. Then identify your own personal challenges. Okay. What it needs for me to understand, mix myself and indulge and, kind of sync with that person or group or system with which I have to work, and then customize your behavior, right? And tune yourself while not losing yourself. You understand globalization and dexterity, right? You should adopt while not losing yourself in the process. And last thing is, make the behavior into muscle memory. What is muscle memory, right? The memory should get into a muscle, into a cell. So when will it go into your muscle memory? When you do something again and again, when you do something repeatedly, that will get into your cell memory. That's what is called being referred as muscle memory. If you do things 100 times. So now, I hard learned, and I'm repeating, I hard learned to speak in a way with Britishers for them to understand what I speak. You understand? So I had made this way of speaking my muscle memory by practicing it 100 times. I voice recorded, I video recorded. That's why I am very comfortable even doing day-long agile sessions with local Britishers in local companies. Understand? So had I not done that, I would have been disapproved as a trainer in this part of the world, and I wouldn't be making money. Okay, I won't be surviving as a trainer. So this is the 4-step plan, right, for us to kind of dwell and move ahead. So there are a few more slides, not important. Okay, they're explaining about that. So summary of the key ideas: being effective across cultures isn't just learning about differences. It's about learning how to adapt your behavior in light of those differences. That's what I was referring to as common sense. I told during the start of the session that, I had emailed Stuart, and then ice broke, and then I was appreciated by Stuart and my company, and then the deal went up, isn't it? Next one, people face three core challenges when adopting cultural behavior: authenticity, competence, and resentment. We have seen challenges, right? So we get enraged because when authenticity gets questioned, or competency gets questioned, or resentment gets questioned. And last thing is, you can overcome these challenges in 4 easy steps. What is the cultural code? Study, research, identify, observe. Okay. Second thing is finding possible challenges, your personal challenges. This I'm fine, this I'm not fine. Dressing is fine. I cannot speak like how I understand, how I should make them understand was my challenge. So I have put some efforts and made my muscle memory. That's all, your job is done. Okay. So this is me, my friends. Network is net worth, right? We should, if you're in touch, we would be sharing mutually what you're doing, what I'm doing. I could learn from you, you could learn from me, and our personal accomplishments also will be shared, and we'll take inspiration. Oh, somebody has achieved that, I should also do something like her or him. And then this is where I'm on LinkedIn, on Facebook, right? And then let's be in touch. I'm done. So any questions we could get into? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Dear participants, if at all you're having any questions, please try to interact with our resource person. Any questions from participants?
Any questions also, any contradictions, any discussions, right? Any queries, clarifications, I'm fine. Because this objective of the session is to kind of add value to ourselves, right? Rather, I could learn something from you.
Yes, I think there are no more questions. I would like to wrap up the session 1. So before going to wrap up, I would like to give the key takeaways of today's session. Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful session. As by my observation, the key takeaways of this particular session is the session is more practical oriented. As while going through your profile, I understand that you're not only the business coach, you're a life coach as well. So whatever the wonderful examples you have given is really very valuable for us. And in addition to that, in connection with that, conditions affecting multinational operations, like how the social, legal, ethical, political, and economic is driving the attitudes and values and expectations of the different participants from across the countries is the very important highlighted point here. And in addition to that, what are the individual differences which is in connection with expatriate system or impatriate system, like that individualism, power distance, uncertainty avoidance, that masculinity, femininity, and time orientation is really need of the hour to discuss in the present uncertainty times. And in connection with the barriers, this is also one of the other key takeaway from my side: barriers to cultural adaptation, that parochialism, ethnocentric approach, and cultural empathy. And in addition to that, also there are different barriers are there in the cultural adaptation. But what are the points were highlighted is also very good. And yes, sir, we are really assertive people, and we are very disciplined. And so these two important points also, the key takeaways in connection with how the organization behavior will be very in across the cultures. And so the concept which was delivered by you on localization, global dexterity is also the important, and what are the examples you have given, which is in connection with maintaining that brand equity and how to maintain this personal integrity. So those the pictures and the presentation part is very good. So in addition to that, in the concluded remarks point of view, you have highlighted 3 challenges. And so can you elaborate some more important thing on the psychological toll, what it is, sir? That was the new term which psychological toll, TOLL.
Yeah, toll is, you know, the what do you call the pain, the
Psychological.
pain toll. That's the toll is, you know, nothing but the pain block, right?
Right.
Psychological strain, psychological, block is what is called toll. So
So,
through resentment and through authenticity and because of competence things only we get the psychological toll strain, right? See, one incident is because these people are shrewd, okay, and we are not shrewd, and somebody was pointed and somebody resigned in one of our clients' engagement. So that person resigned, it has become a psychological toll. It acted as psychological toll, and she resigned.
okay.
And when she resigned, it means the work will suffer, and to bring another person, it will take time, and the existing people will have it extra workload. You understand? So all these are outcome of because we were not empathetic towards that person because we lack the cultural empathy.
Right. Yes, sir. Thank
And
you so much. Yes.
sure. On this note, I would like to understand one more thing. See, I understand that that in this FDP we are speaking to faculty members. Okay, so all are well educated and qualified and experienced teachers. But what I'm not missing is, I mean, I several times asked some questions. Right, there was no response. On the chat box or in the conversation. That actually makes me wonder. It's not that I have all the expertise in the world to tell them, right? But what happens, this discussion mode, right, in FDP actually opens new dimensions. Madam, we all know, if you run through the PPT today, I avoided PPT content. Actually 60% I did not speak about PPT. I was giving examples because and all of them were personally experienced examples. They are my stories. So I am trying to kind of push my stories, right, in a conversation, so that that would add to their wisdom, and tomorrow when they teach, right, in their classrooms about this topic, they would be able to dwell. So I would propose and encourage, right, the conversation mode in these FDPs. I don't know if I am right in proposing this, madam.
Yes, sir. You're absolutely right. Right. Whatever you are saying is absolutely right, sir. Thank you so much,
Okay.
sir, for the wonderful session. And
Sure.
so for all the way, taking your time and giving a good examples and speaking and interacting with the participants, really an amazing session for us, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, madam.
Yes,
And
thank
all, Ramesh Kumar, Mariala sir,
Yes, sir.
Ravi sir, thank you so much.
Yes.
Huh?
So,
Bye.
Bye. So, dear participants, we will be having a break for 5 minutes. Don't leave the session. Another resource person is also ready. Just take a break for 5 minutes, and we'll back for the second session.